Hi, Tracy here, also known as Mercy Tiara, with another episode of Find Your Mojo. Each episode will give you a prompt or a challenge to get your creative juices flowing and get you scrapping and documenting your memories. This time, the prompt is to let your embellishments guide you. And then the subtitle would be, but don't let them limit you. So I'm using the Sweater Weather Kit, which is the scrapbooking kit from Scrapbook and Cards Today. It's the fall kit, and I'm starting off with this Fall is in the Air paper from Echo Park. And this paper stood out for me as I reviewed the contents of the kit. It really stood out for me as one of my favorite background papers. I love how the center of it is much more white, and then it has almost like a very faint vignette effect all the way around the edges of it. And I'm thinking about doing a double matting, but I can't quite decide. And part of how I decide will be based upon how this layout ends up turning out. So I'm picking out some fall pattern papers here. All of the pattern papers in this kit look beautiful on any of your fall layouts, but I am particularly looking for some that have beautiful goldens and orange and reds and greens and yellows and browns, because those are all the colors that are in this photo. So I'm taking this piece of basil paper. It is called Sugar Wafer Plaid, and I love this paper. It's actually solid on the other side, and then this beautiful plaid on this side. It's a nice stiff cardstock. So the other thing that I really love about it is that it's a really warm gray. I guess you might be able to call it grayish. It's kind of like a brownie gray, which is perfect for, and I'll let you know in a few minutes why it's so perfect for this application. So I would love to use some of these pattern papers. I especially love the floral ones there, but I'm going to cut. I'm actually going to tear myself a piece of this map paper because it's a nice neutral pattern paper, and I'm also going to pick out some of the die cuts from this pack by Pebbles. And as I go through these die cuts, I really want the die cuts to guide this page, because that's the prompt for this month. And I think that it's a really nice starting point, because when I first started with this photo, I didn't really know what I was going to do. But then I remembered that there was a deer in this die cut pack. And so what I'm doing is I'm just sorting the die cuts into categories. I am putting all the leaves up there, all of the animals, except for the deer, over to the side. And then the trees and the fruit are also in little piles. And I kept the gnomes out. Well, I put them back in the package because I plan to use those on another project. So at first, again, starting with these die cuts, I want to design my page around the die cuts. And so I'm just drawing my little stick figure deer, and I'm thinking the title will go beside it, and then the photo would go up in the other corner. But then after I sketched that out on my little notebook, I decided to change it so that the photo was up here in this left-hand corner instead of the right-hand corner. And I want my deer to be looking at the title, but now the deer is going to be center and the title is going to be off to the right. And my title for this one is going to be Woodland Friends. And at this point, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to use for the word friends, because I want it to be smaller and to go underneath. And then I noticed this little banner says my friend. And I thought, maybe I can change this banner or cover up the word my so that it says Woodland Friend. I really preferred it to be called Woodland Friends, though, because there were actually, you can only see one deer in the photo, but there's a family of 4 deer. Well, now, unfortunately, it's down to 3 because the mama seems to have gone. But I can always add an S if I want to call it friends, but I'm just going to sit on that idea for a few minutes and start to design my embellishments around this photo. And so these embellishments are going to take the place of pattern paper. So this layout is not going to have very much pattern paper on it at all, because if I added any of those beautiful papers that I really wanted to add that I took out at the beginning, I'm thinking about maybe having an arrow point to my journaling, which is going to go right above Woodland Friend. And now that I'm putting a second friend on the layout, I really need to put an S here. So I'm just going into my stash and I'm looking for a stamp that might fit there. It doesn't have to be a perfect match, but I think I'd rather stamp than handwrite the letter S. So this is a font called Stepping Stone from Studio Calico, and I am just going to do a little tester there. And I'm using Chestnut Roan pigment ink. Actually it's chalk ink. And see how that S is a little bit bigger? I don't even care. I'm just rolling with it. I don't need my projects to be perfect. And so this is a good example of just kind of rolling with it. At least it says friends, which is what I wanted it to say. So I'm happy about that. And then that flower is going to cover up the word my. And I'm just taking this burlap flower from Maya Road that came in the kit, and I really love the natural texture that gives to the page, but it's a little bit too big, and so I'm thinking about cutting some of the outer edges because it's just a strip of burlap that's been folded and put on itself, kind of like wrapped around on itself. So I just cut it off, and then I basically put a little snip in the burlap, and then I took a glue dot and I glued the remaining flower to itself, and then I just cut off the excess from the outer layers that I had cut off. And I did so kind of avoiding the center because I didn't want to cut the center because I was afraid that I would, if I cut the thread that was holding it all together, that the whole thing would unravel. And so now I have this extra piece of burlap that I'm thinking about using somewhere else, but I'm actually going to make this other burlap flower a little bit smaller as well. So again, I'm kind of thinking about it, and that burlap flower is actually going to be in the top corner of my page, and I really don't want it to be bigger than the flower that's at the bottom. I like bottom things to be bigger than the top things, just for balance and to anchor the lower part of the page. And so you saw me, I just cut that apart, and now I am using a series of glue dots to hold it together. This time when I cut it apart, I didn't care about the thread. I actually undid the thread. I cut into the thread and unwound it, and now I'm just using a glue dot to hold everything all together in the center. And you can see some of the threads hanging, and I didn't fold it exactly perfectly, but I'm okay with that. If that bothers you, then if you were to modify these flowers, I just do so in such a way that you can just fold the little and tuck the little threads into one of the folds. So what I'm doing now while I'm still zoomed in is I'm going to outline this little deer. I'm outlining him to give him a little bit more definition and weight because he is sitting on the bottom of the page. And again, I like weighty things to be on the bottom. And I'm just playing around with my different markers, my different brown markers, so that I can decide which one I want to use to outline. I ended up using my brown Zig Writer, which is one of my go-to outlining pens. I love Zig Writers. And I am very carefully double outlining it. I'm double outlining it, but making it look like a single outline. So I'm very carefully, the second time around, I'm trying very carefully to go on exactly the same spot as I went on the first time around. A double outline gives something a more casual look, and a single outline isn't as casual. I'm double outlining it because I want it to be a thicker line than what this marker gives me, but not quite as thick as what the other end of this marker gives me. So this was the double outline just kind of made it more what I wanted it to be. I'm going to outline the little hedgehog friend as well, even though he's got little quills that go, or fur, or I don't know if he's a porcupine or what he is, but he's got little bumpy things that stick out of his outline, but that's okay. So now I'm going to see how cute he looks. I'm going to go ahead and outline the acorn as well, even though you can barely see it. I just wanted to give that a little bit more definition as well. And now I'm going to start to put some of these things together. So before I do so, I'm going to add this map paper that I had chosen before. And now I am combining white elements with cream elements, and that's not always an easy thing to do. And some people really don't want to do that at all. But there is a trick to combining white and cream. And one of the tricks, there's probably a couple of tricks, but the trick that I like to use is when I'm combining a white and a cream, I try to make sure that the white that I'm combining has some brown on it. And so the lines on that map, even though the background paper is white, the lines are all brown. So it kind of brings in some warmth to that white paper. I'm just going to paint these burlap flowers that I've made smaller by pulling off the outside edges of it. And I just took some Liquitex Basics paint, but any kind of paint would do. And at first I thought about just doing the outside, like the outer edge of each of the petals. And then the more I did it, the more I just wanted to make the whole thing be white. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to add paint inside all the little crevices until the whole thing is not entirely covered in paint, but so that the whole thing has at least a very thin coating of paint on it. And I like the hand painted look, and I used a dry brush, and that just I really like how that accentuates the texture on those burlap flowers, and it also makes them a little bit lighter looking. So the white, of course, is a lighter color than brown, and it just gives them a little bit of lift. So now I need to cut down this paper, and as I mentioned, I plan to perhaps double mat it, and so I'm going to take 1/4 of an inch off of all 4 sides. If this didn't have a vignetting on it, I would have just taken 1/2 inch off of 2 adjacent sides, but I don't want it to be lopsided or to lose the vignetting, so instead I decided to take 1/4 inch off of each of the sides. And now I'm going to put everything all back the way that it was. First, I'm going to attach the photo to that map paper. The words, the font in Woodland is also, it's on wax paper right now, but it's also white. And so it's important when you are adding white amongst a predominantly cream page that it's not only in one place. So adding that white paper helps my thicker that is white not stand out and look like it doesn't belong there. I'm using these Stampin' Up! Dimensional adhesive pieces. I always call them dots, but they're hexagons. I'm using them to create a little bit of lift, and I'm just placing them under the tips of the leaves. And the further in you place those little adhesive pieces, the more lift you will get. And so I just had to readjust things so that that flower will sit nicely. And I'm going to layer a couple of loose leaves here as well. And I want one of them to fall down over, like, onto the photo. And with those little adhesive pieces that I'm putting on from Stampin' Up, I'm actually not taking the backing off of them, so that they're just to hold the space. I'm not using them as an adhesive. So I'll place these 2 leaves like that, and then the flower will go right in the middle of them. And I basically want this little spray of leaves and flowers to look like it's kind of hanging half behind the photo and half in front of the photo. And that's why I wanted to make sure that one of the leaves was falling into the photo. Now I'm coming down here to work on this part of the layout, because I really like how the top is looking, so I just want to make sure that I have a similar feel to this. I don't want my page to look too disjointed. So again, with the Stampin' Up! Adhesive, dimensional adhesive, to hold that space, and it casts really nice gray shadows on your page as well when you have a bit of lift on items. And I'm just going to scooch everything over a little tiny bit in just a second here, because I headed over a little bit too far. I want it to be quite over to the right quite a ways. And I'm using the lines on the paper as a guide here, and I want there to be just a tiny little bit of space between that dark line on the pattern paper and then the tips of my letters. I have to move the W over a little bit, because the word wood is going to end up being larger than the word land, even though they're the same number of letters. The W's and the O's are wider. So now I'm going to layer my little friends. I'm putting the deer on the back layer because he's larger, and then I'm putting 2 foam dots on the little porcupine or hedgehog or whatever he is, and I'm sure someone will tell me, and I'm just putting him on a bit of an angle so it looks like he's either smelling or looking at the flower once the flower gets added on. And again, I'm using those Zot glue dots in order to place my burlap flowers and giving it a good pushing so that it's really adhered down quite well. Then this is one of the acrylic pieces that came in the kit. This is the little arrow, and I love how it looks. It's a beautiful, subtle metallic shine to it. It's a bronze color. It's so pretty. Or maybe an amber color. It's very, very pretty. And now I'm trying to decide, do I want these to be 2 distinct clumps, or do I want it to be one kind of cluster that goes diagonally through the page from the top left through to the bottom right? And I've decided to have it be one cluster that runs the whole diagonal width of the page. I'm adding some of these buttons. They're from American Crafts Remarks, and I'm also grabbing one of the flare badges that was exclusive to the kit. It says Autumn on it, and I really like it because it has a little printed piece of burlap on it, so it kind of picks up on the burlap that's already on the page, and it also provides a little bit of balance to the cluster that's in the top here. I'm going to put enamel dots wherever there is one of those buttons from American Crafts. These enamel dots are from the Echo Park Follows in the Air collection, and so the colors are just a perfect match for the die cuts, and the die cuts are by Pebbles, but everything is just so beautifully coordinated in this kit. So I'm putting 3 enamel dots, and I'm just clustering each of these 3 sets around the buttons that were already on the page. I'm just making it so that there are 2 small ones and 1 medium-sized one in each of my little clusters. And I'm going to use one of those Zot glue dots to put the flare badge on that little cluster of leaves and so on. And now each of the burlap flowers is going to get a little feather paper clip, and those are from Maya Road too. For now, I'm just sticking them in there to see if I'm going to like them. I can't quite decide if it's a little bit too much because those burlap flowers provide quite a lot of texture, and I don't want to go overboard. Now I'm thinking about doing some journaling lines, but I couldn't find my pencil, so I decided I'm just going to freehand it. I'm again using my Zig writer, which is my brown pen. I'm just using the fine point of it, and I'll read you my journaling. It says, Pascal seems to love animals. He runs out to try to feed the fawns when they visit. Their mama hasn't been with them the past few visits, so we're a little concerned for them. So that's where the journaling stops, and then I'm going to underline it, and that just kind of makes it feel like it belongs. I find I've been underlining my journaling a lot for the past several months, I guess it just kind of gives it a home. And so now I'm going to take my scrapbook adhesive, which is Dot Runner from 3L, and I'm going to nestle this into between the journaling and the title and the top of the deer's head so that it all looks like it belongs together. And I'm going to take one of those Zot glue dots, and I'm just wrapping it around. I just twisted the feather so that the glue dot wraps all the way around it, so that I have just on the tip of the feather, so that then I can pull back the burlap flower, stick the feather in where I want it to be. Here I'm going to do the exact same thing again on this one. And then the little feather will stay put in the place that I want it to be, except I'm actually taking it off and switching it around because it was facing the wrong direction. I want it to kind of curve along with the banner that it's on top of. I didn't want it to be curving the opposite direction. And so now I'm going to zoom out so that I can consider what I'm going to do for my background. Now, I thought at first about maybe having just the plaid background, but I'm going to go back to my original idea because that plaid background is just a little bit too much. I do have a bit of, I've cut down my centerpiece a little bit more than I normally would have to have a subtle matte all the way around it. So So yeah, it was just a little bit too much of the plaid. But once I mount the whole thing on this piece of brown cardstock, first I'm going to trim the manufacturer's strip off of the plaid piece. Again, that is from Fall is in the Air from Echo Park. And now this is a piece of American Crafts. It's actually wood grain textured cardstock, and I really love it. And it's a bit of a shame that I'm covering up the wood grain here, but I really love the shade of brown. It was perfect, so I wanted to use it for this. And that just gives me a little bit of a border all the way around the page. It gives it kind of draws your eye and ties in some of the other strong brown lines that show up in different places on the page. So the matting isn't exactly a brown line, but it's that kind of greigey taupe type of a color. And then there's hits of really dark chestnut brown, like in that acorn, and to a lesser extent in the porcupine hedgehog creature and in the flare badge. So I really like how that looks. And then I'm just going to re-underline, and I'm doing it very carefully, re-underline my journaling so that it has a bit of a thicker line. So again, I don't have very many options for my brown pens. I have lots of different thicknesses of black pens, but I'm taking my time here so that I don't make too much of a wobbly line. I want it to look like it was just outlined once, not multiple times. So I really like how the plaid pattern all the way around the outside of this just brings the whole layout together and frames it in so nicely. And the bit of dark brown matting all the way around it also really helps anchor everything. So now I thought I was done and I showed you the close-ups and everything, but then when I went to take a picture of it, I realized that it just needed a little something else. So I have my machine threaded, my sewing machine threaded with orange thread in the top, and it's actually pink thread in the bottom, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to see it. And oh, there's my cat poking her head around. That's Lila. I didn't know that you could see her. Sorry about that. She always is dying to make a cameo appearance in my videos. So I'm just going very carefully around that little cluster of leaves, and there's also a paper clip there that I didn't want to get accidentally sew on or anything like that. So I'm just adding that orange thread border all the way around, and I really love how that looks. It is in the photos at the end, so you'll get to see it a little bit better than I'm showing it right here. The camera angle was a little bit funny. I did trim off the little bits of thread that were hanging before I took pictures of it, and now it's going to go in my album. So here is the final product that you get to see. I like that added touch of the stitching all the way around it. I think that a fall or winter project looks even better than any other project with stitching on it. There's something about stitching that feels homey and cozy and wintry to me for some reason, especially when you use a nice warm colored thread like that orange. So I hope that this project has given you some ideas on how you can let embellishments be your guide. In this case, I picked out the die cut pieces that I thought would tell the story that I was wanting to tell, and then I just arranged them around the photo and scrapbooked around them. So thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you all have a really great scrappy week.